Lesson 12? Lesson 12 is what we're going to be covering today and on Sunday. We're sort of dividing these two somewhat difficult topics up and trying to spend a little bit of time talking about these. Hopefully it'll be beneficial to all of us. Some of us find ourselves in these cases, and it'd be nice to apply some scripture to these. And this is probably going to become more and more the case as we continue to go on. So before we begin class, let's have a word of prayer. God, we are grateful that you love us. We're grateful that you care for us, and we're grateful that one day we will have a permanent home, a home that we can be with you forever. We pray that you'll be with us tonight as we study your word, that we'll study the biblical principles, but then we'll also be practical and help one another as we navigate some of these tougher situations when it comes to family, and to have wisdom and to know exactly how to do this in a way that honors you and honors the people that we love. Through Jesus we pray, amen. All right, so the two different things that we're going to be talking about a little bit today and Sunday are, one is adult children living at home. How does that work? What are the pitfalls of it? What are the good things of it? Why does it happen? How to handle that? What kind of conversations you need to have? And then the other thing that we'll be talking about on Sunday is what happens when you're charged with taking care of your parents and they cooperate with you, or what happens when they don't cooperate with you, and when do you need to start having discussions about, hey, kids, I'm getting older, or mom and dad, you're getting older, I've noticed some things, you're not, you're putting yourself in. How do you have these tough conversations where you have to have discussions with your parents about, is it still safe for you to be driving? Can you live alone still? And the goal there would also be to have preemptive conversations about that, to try to do it ahead of time so that there are no surprises and everybody's on the same page when we're all still thinking clearly. And we'll maybe get to this a little bit, but there was an elder at the first church I worked at. He was a great man, he did a great job, he was a really good elder, and he said he was going to resign at a certain age, because at this age I'm resigning from being an elder. And I said, why? And he said, because I've worked with too many senile elders. And I said, we'll tell you when you're senile. And he said, I won't believe you. He's lived long enough to know that when that happens, when that line is crossed and the mind's not working right anymore, no amount of reasoning can really be done. So his point was, I'm going to, be thoughtful to the congregation and the elders I serve with. At a certain point, I'm just going to say, you know what, at 70 or 75, whatever, I don't remember what the age was, I'm going to quit being an elder. And he lived to be in his 90s, had a great mind the entire time, but that's just what his decision he made. The point being, that's true. When someone crosses the line of being someone who's losing their mind, getting dementia, Alzheimer's, they're no longer capable of having reasonable discussions sometimes. And you want to have these discussions before that happens. So we're going to talk first, this part of the lesson, today's lesson, about adult kids living at home. And some stats for you. 1 out of every 3 adults ages 18 to 34 currently live at home. There are more adults 18 to 34 living at home than living with a spouse in their own home. This trend really started and almost had reached a peak right around 2006, 2007, before the 2008 financial crisis. And then it grew more after that, and then it peaked for a little while right at COVID, and then it started going down. Now the last couple of years it's gone back up. So it is something that it's a relatively new trend. How many of you moved out of your house before you were 22, let's say? All right, most people moved out of the house before they're 22. And that's just not being the case anymore. And there's a lot of reasons for this as I researched it and found things out. One is you do have financial considerations. And there's 2 reasons why you would have financial situations. One could be just bad financial choices on the kid's part. One could be that they weren't ready to go to college. They didn't get the skills in college they needed to get a job. And that's more individual based. But there is no doubt the general economy does have some kind of an impact on this as well. One of the other reasons that came up were kids having lower social skills today than they did years before. That could have to do with screens and video games. I'm not going to get into all that, but the social skills of a 20-year-old today, not quite the same as the social skills of a 20-year-old 40 years ago, let's say. It's just different. Marriage is not as common now as it was years ago. So wasn't marriage one of the things that prompted you to move out of your house and to get your own place with your new spouse? Now, kids aren't getting married as much, and they're not getting married as early, and so that doesn't give the natural time that most kids move out. And so that there's a lot of reasons for that as well. Not job ready. I think there's an overall general increase in anxiety in the world today than there was 40 years ago. There's more social anxiety. There's more personal anxiety. There's just more stress about what the world is like now, and a lack of trust. They don't. You've seen this. The younger generation, they don't trust. I'll just tell my family, okay? I trusted everybody. I mean, I just assumed everybody was good and everybody was going to give me a good deal, and I trusted the government. I trusted my doctor. My doctor said this, that, or the other. And now we're sort of, and I'm not saying this is wrong. This is probably some wisdom in this, being a lot more skeptical of things now, and so there's a lot less trust in other people and society, and that is one of the reasons. So I'm going to start out with just discussing, remember, raise your hand if you need a microphone. What are some slam dunk reasons why a 35-year-old, now I will say this, there's more males living at home with one or both parents than there are females living at home. So I'm just painting a picture here. 35 years old, what are some slam dunk good reasons why that person should still be living with his parents? What's a good reason? All right. Why would it be a really good reason why someone 35 years old should still be living with their parents? What is it? Everybody would say, yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
I know of, I personally know people who live with their parents because they move in with their parents to support them. The parents made some very foolish decisions over their lifetime, and they can't make it on their own.
Yeah, so when the reason they're still living there or they move back in the house is to help the parents, then I think we would all say, yeah, that's probably a pretty good reason to come back home. Now, that does pose some challenges in and of itself, especially if that couple's married, moving back in. If they're moving in with their parents at their parents' house, who's the woman of the house? What's going on with the kitchen? Who's in charge of that? And it still poses some issues, unless... No, it's not the ideal situation. But I think most people would say, if that's the case, yeah, that's probably all right. I mean, that's probably, we could all agree that's fine. Anything else?
I would say medically.
Okay.
Maybe they need medical, they've got something wrong, had a stroke or something happened to them, and they need to take care of them.
Okay, they themselves, the younger person, they're sick, they need help being taken care of. All right, very good.
A single parent
Okay.
And financial considerations.
All right, some big thing has happened in their life that has put them in a situation where they need to go back home. So it could be a divorce, and now they're going to move back home. But let me ask you. I know we're going to get you in a second. We're going to get. This is. I don't think this is being streamed to everybody except our congregation. That's the plan, right, Emery? All right. So we can be open about this stuff. It could be challenging. But I would want us to think about this. when should that be temporary and when should it be permanent? Okay, there's life situations that happen. It might not be a stroke, it might be a temporary injury that's still significant that they need their parents to help them with. But what's the goal? Is the goal for it to be a forever thing or a short-term thing? So the short-term thing, it's a lot more understandable. That forever thing, unless the parents are the ones sick, it's a little more challenging. No?
If the younger person has themselves made poor choices and needs help restarting their life.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. Sometimes, and I think this happens quite often. And then when we get to this a little bit later, it's every case is going to be different, because sometimes when a kid makes bad choices, especially against the advice and counsel of their parents, and then they end up in a huge bunch of trouble, you have two choices. And some of you would choose differently. And I'm not saying either choice is right or wrong based upon, some of the things we've already talked about. Some would choose, well, the kid needs to deal with the consequences of what they did. Others would say, all right, we're going to have a baseline here. We're going to recognize together that there were mistakes made, and then we're going to come up with a plan, and that plan means you're going to move back in. Again, I think, though, we'd have to talk about, is this a permanent move back in? Or I think that would be not the ideal, right? The idea would be this is a temporary move back in to help you overcome some of these things that you're struggling with right now. All right? Dave?
Just out of curiosity, did they break this down by ethnicity or race?
They did. I didn't have all that down.
Okay, I just wondered because
They do.
I'm sure there's differences between it.
Yeah, and where you live, too. If you live bigger cities,
Yeah.
like 10 of the largest, where that number is the highest, like 8 of the 10 are in California and larger cities where people are, because you have a cost of living, the houses are so expensive. And even here in Florida, what's happened recently in the housing market in Florida has made that even more challenging. It's probably going to continue to happen a little bit more often because the houses are so expensive here now.
Right. So on Google, a one bedroom is $125 to $1,250 to $1,500. And if you're going to have minimum wage, that person's going to have $2,400. So after rent, they have $600 to pay on all the utilities and phone bill and food and.
Yeah, for sure, housing plays a role in that, and we can continue talking about that. But let's look at a couple scriptures that I think are important for us to deal with here. One, and you know this passage, it's in Matthew chapter 18. It's what happens when you're having a conflict and someone is doing someone else wrong. How do you handle that? All right, you go to that person privately and you talk, right? So if you're in a situation where this is happening because, one, the parent is doing something wrong or has done something wrong, not prepared the child to get out on their own, or whatever the case may be, or if the children are doing something that's causing this, that needs to be discussed. And the best way to do that is just, hey, let's have a talk about this. Why are we here? Why are we in this situation? Let's talk it out. So that's, you go to them, and if one person continues to refuse to act properly, then you're going to have to get some other people involved in that. And if that doesn't work, then you're going to even have to take it to the extreme case. And that same concept applies in this situation, because sometimes, and I was sort of surprised as I was doing some more research on this, that sometimes that's what the parents want. The parents don't want to be empty nesters, and so they almost pressure their kids to stay longer than what might be healthy for any of them. No, I don't want to be alone, whatever the case may be. And especially maybe a divorce that happened at the parents' level, and you have a single mom. Now she's going from having a couple kids at home, feels safe, protected, and now all the kids are leaving. She's like, well, wait a minute. Can't one of you come back and live with me? I don't want to live alone. So that's happening more than I realized. Galatians chapter 6. Let's go to Galatians chapter 6. And this is a passage that sounds contradictory, but it says in verse 2, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. And then in verse 5, it says, let each one of you bear your own burdens. So how does this apply to the situation of adult parents and adult children living in the same house together? And does it apply at all? Just to give you an idea what these words mean, the easiest way to handle it, the first one basically considers it to be a heavy load like a boulder. Bear one another's boulders, but bear your own backpack. So the way that it's broken up is there are some things that happen in life that are big, right? There are some things that happen in life that you can't handle on your own, that you need help for. But we can't take that same mindset and transfer it over to the backpack, right? Some people are responsible, all of us are responsible for certain things. And we can't expect our kids to do things that we should be doing or can do. And we can't expect our parents to continue to do things for us into adulthood that we should be doing, our own individual load that God expects us to carry. And I think that's a good way of looking at that in that passage. Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 15 says, "But speaking the truth in love may grow up in all things into him who is the head, that is Christ." Colossians 4 and verse 6 says, "Let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer each one." So I think those are great verses to keep in mind. Proverbs 27 and verse 6 says, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful." Do kids sometimes have to tell their parents tough things? Do parents sometimes have to tell their kids tough things? Can those things hurt? Yeah, and that's life. Now, when you're a kid, you sort of expect that a little bit more. You know, you expect to be the taker of a lot of that. When you have two grown-ups having these discussions, it's a little more difficult. Those wounds might become a little bit harder to accept and take as we continue to get older. So our first question, and I didn't get the thing. Could you just move this, put that on and put the first question up? All right, so there's these two things. There's sometimes we have truth and no love, or love and no truth. That can be different ways of handling things. You might have people that they use the excuse of being, I just like to be straightforward. But really what they're doing, and they might say blunt, that's the harder word, but they're just being rude. They're just not communicating in a loving way. And that causes a lot of hurt. But if you communicate with love, or you don't communicate, and you're using the excuse of love not to handle the tough things that need to be handled, then we're probably not doing well either. So the question is there one of these two extremes that you might be tempted to go to? And what would life look like if you could balance that out correctly? If you and your parents, or you and your kids could balance love and truth together. Anybody have anything that you came up with on that? All right, Mary has something. Somebody else raise your hand so we can get the microphone to you.
Well, like many moms, I think I'm better at loving and waiting, kind of. But I did learn at one point that you do have to balance those things, because it's not loving to let someone take advantage or do something, not do something that they need to do for themselves.
Yeah, very good. So your tendency, maybe your natural, and this could be a personality thing, this could be a gender thing, this could be a generational thing, where, hey, you know what, my personality is to, let's just wait it out, let's just show love, wait it out, and see what happens. But Mary says she learned that sometimes, as much as you want to wait it out and love and hope the love and the waiting out is going to solve the problem, sometimes it doesn't, and it isn't loving to let someone not do what they're supposed to do. If it's a responsibility that they have, and you're not making them or forcing them or encouraging them to fulfill their obligation out of I don't want to say excuse, out of a thought process, I'm showing love here and patience, then that's not helpful either. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
All right, over here, Scott.
Pretty much like what Mary was saying, but the bottom line is truth is a matter of communication. you both can be right, just depending on the personalities and different perspective on, say, what's creating the problem. As long as there's love, you can work through it. But there, again, don't let the sun go down on your anger. Try to get things taken care of. If not, sleep on it and then talk about it the next day.
All right, very good. Very good, Terry.
So I'm kind of guilty of, what could be perceived, I guess, as speaking truth without love. But I disagree with that because I think it's just a cultural thing in the United States where we have to have everything all warm and fluffy. There are other cultures around the world that speak bluntly and they speak truth. And when we speak truth and love, I'm showing you love by speaking truth to you.
Yeah.
If I didn't have love for you, I wouldn't say anything to you at all.
Yeah.
So I guess I get kind of confused with that. And
I guess let's look at it this way. Can you say something that is true and it be in love, but said in a way that the person doesn't feel like you're loving them?
well, so let's say, all right, a lot of you guys know that I had fallen away years ago, and I've since returned. But there was a lot of truth spoken to me in love, but it was done in a loving way, but I didn't like it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
There's definitely truth to that.
So, I mean, I have a hard time understanding how our likability to what someone's saying somehow makes it unloving or untruthful. This is just something that I struggle with my entire life, I guess.
Okay.
And
Does anybody want to help Terry out there?
I guess I'm just direct with things, and sometimes I don't. I'm just not good at the fluff thing. That's why I have her.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll just say. Well, let Debbie's got it all solved for you. Debbie. And then Emery wants to solve it after Debbie, if Debbie can't.
I just think men think differently than women.
Okay.
Women think emotionally, men think matter-of-factly.
Okay.
It's like when guys get in an argument or whatever, they hash it out and they go on with it. Women, tend to
around a
think
little bit
about
longer?
things. It's funny because I was on my phone the other day and this kid, I guess, college kid, said to his mom, "Girlfriend mad at me." And she says, "Why is she mad at you?" And he said, "Well, we went shopping together and she had tried an outfit and she came out and I told her she looked fat in it. She asked me how it looked and I told her she looked fat." And the mom's like, "What?" And he says, "Well, I told her the truth." So I just think women think emotionally and men think matter-of-factly and,
Okay.
you know.
Like we said with Mary, sometimes the generation you grew up in is going to have something to do with this. Sometimes it's your personality. Sometimes it's how you were raised. I mean, we're just blunt in our family. That's the way we've always been. That's all I know. I don't know how to do anything else. We're going to Emery, and then I'll have maybe a thought.
I'm not sure how to follow up all the conversation, but the diversity of man and woman, husband, wife, can be a tool to help with that. I'm different than my wife. I may be more loving than truth. She's more truth than loving. But together, when we're bound together, we can express ourselves so that our children see, okay, both love and truth. It's not that they see only one, it's that they do see both of those things, the truth and the love. They're doing this, we're doing this for you, just like we do discipline. We're telling you these things so that you will grow to be a stronger person, a stronger soul for Christ, whatever it may be, but to make you better. Yeah. And it's going to hurt. But just like exercising, you have to do the hard things sometimes to become stronger.
And that's one thing that I think both of you may have said about, I know Terry said specifically, wanting to allow the kids to fail so they know how to deal with the failure as they get older. My thought on this, Terry, just real briefly, is you can say something directly and bluntly, and it depends on who that is. I would assume that when you are blunt with your kids, they know you love them because of the relationship, right? So they know you, they know that you love them, and they would probably feel a little weird if you came in a little fuzzy. They would know something is wrong. Uh-oh, we need to have that conversation with Dad because he can't live by himself anymore. He's a little too fuzzy here. But I think that the love there is there, so the bluntness doesn't lose the love. Being blunt or direct doesn't automatically take away the love. right? Is if that's there to live with. I don't know. I think Tim had it next.
I was going to say the way I would look at this is the third part of that question. What would it look like to practice both? Well, it looks like Jesus, who at one time turned a bunch of tables over and was demonstrating love when he did that. And another time he sat down with a woman at a well. You have to evaluate the situation and the person a little bit further than that. When Terry's being blunt, that doesn't mean he doesn't love. Just because somebody might not understand that. We're not as good at this as Jesus is, but that's what Jesus was a master at this. He knew when to, he was pretty harsh with the Pharisees.
Absolutely.
He was pretty harsh, but he wasn't harsh with everybody, was he?
Yeah.
And he was good at this. And it's something that the elders here struggle with as well. I mean, we can't talk to everybody the same.
To know who the faint-hearted are, who the weak are, who the rebellious are. You got to figure that out.
You have to figure that out.
Yeah. So I have down here.
And we don't always get it right. Yeah.
Nobody does,
Yeah.
except Jesus. I have down here in the next point. Each situation is different, and so you can't just say this is the answer to everybody's situation. It doesn't work that way. But I think there are some principles that are important that we can continue to discuss.
Quick, the verse you're using is a really good verse. Okay? If we could take God's love and take his truth and apply it to our life in the way that he intends, we'd be better equipped to deal with this with one another. I think when you come to that point in your life where you embrace the truth of God and the love of God for yourself, you become equipped to do both, to tell the truth in love and to love the truth that you tell in love. Okay? In the church, we have a rough time with that because there's still a lot of sin that's there on the table between us that makes that more challenging. We're not Jesus. We're trying to be like him, but we're not him. And so our brokenness and our own sin issues that we have in our life are what we fight more than anything. It's just like in evangelism. You want to tell people the truth. You're either saved or you're lost. You're either in Christ or you're lost. And some people don't want to hear that. It's there. But I think once you come to terms with that, with yourself, then you can talk to people pretty much the way they need to be talked to if you know them pretty well, you know where they're coming from.
Yeah, the closer we are to ourselves of being Christ-like and being like God, the easier this is going to be to happen. There's no doubt about it. If you've met people that could tell you something so directly, and you know it's out of love, and you're just forced to have to deal with what they're saying. I mean, you just don't have any other way around it because they love you. You know they love you. You know they have your best interest. They're being direct and straightforward, but there's nothing that you can do about it because it's just the truth. And what happens sometimes, though, is we don't communicate in proper ways, and then what happens is the whole argument stems around how you said that instead of what you said. And that's what you got to try to avoid. We've all seen that at work, or we've had a relationship with that. That's not what I said. Well, that's not what I meant. Well, that's how they took it. And now we can't deal with the real hard truth that needs to be dealt with until we deal with the fact that I didn't say that right, or whatever the case may be. So that's just reality. That's going to happen because we're human and we're going to miscommunicate. But it's a very rare skill to be able to talk directly to everybody because your reputation and your manner of love is so strong that they'll just sit there and listen to it. I think that gets better with age. We get better at that, and we've had more of a chance to realize, hey, you know what? That person's not out to get me. I've known them for 20 years. They're not out to get me. They're just trying to say that because they think I need to hear that, and if they think I need to hear it, I probably need to hear it. And I think that's important. Debbie, and then we'll have to move on.
Well, I agree. It's all in your delivery. You could say something to someone, I really hate to tell you this, but I love you so much, and I'm going to tell you the truth about this situation. I just think it's how you
for sure.
deliver the information.
Sure.
You got to know your audience.
Yeah, without question. So each situation is different. So let's talk a little bit about this. So let's go back to our original question. We talked about some slam dunk reasons why it would be okay for grown 30-year-olds, 35-year-olds to live at home, what would be some reasons why it would definitely not be acceptable? You can just say, you know what, that can't happen. I mean, that just can't keep going on. Somebody we give one to Jared.
A good example I could think of would be if the adult child refused to work and just wanted to live off his parents because it was easy.
Yeah, so laziness would be something we'd say, no, that has to stop. If they're not having a job, and there's going along with that, there might be some other things. If they have a job, but they're spending all their money on silly things and not paying rent and not saving the money to get into the house or to get the down payment, I think that would fall in a similar category, not just being lazy, but being unacceptable with not working the way God tells them to work and not saving and planning and getting ready to get out of that. Because what we talked about, most of these situations that are in here are better if they're not permanent, right? So if they're not willing to take the steps to make this a temporary situation and they expect it to be a permanent situation, I think most of would say that's probably not good. Probably need to do something different. Herb?
There could be some activities they want to engage in at your house that you are just, drugs, parties, people over, trashing your house. That's not going to work. That's just not going to happen.
All right, so they want to live at your house, but they don't want any rules and they want to be able to do whatever they want. That would probably say, no, you can't have that. Now it's probably time to cut this off because I gave you a chance and you're proving that you didn't really need the chance. You're just trying to want to keep living. And that's the truth in love, right? You can't keep living here if you're not going to be making the attempt to get out of here. And you're not making that. Now that becomes difficult because how do you go about doing that? The parents. Are they micromanaging this? They have to respect their adult child who's living at their house as a man or a woman. So you have to be careful not to micromanage, but I think you can have conversations that put out clear expectations about, what's the end game here and what steps are you taking to get that end game. And then you can be a lot more patient in there. And that doesn't have to be a negative thing at all. It's like this is just a temporary thing that's happening because of bad things that have happened, no matter whose fault they are. And I'm helping you as a parent. And right now, I think one thing is going to be a major deal going forward is kids staying at home just to save a down payment for a house. Because it just costs so much to get in a house. And so they could have the conversation, yeah, we're glad to have you stay. But you have to work, you got to get a job, you got to save the money for the down payment. If you're spending the money frivolously all the time and there's no steps being made to that, then we probably have to have another conversation. All right, who has the microphone?
I was going to say taking advantage of them. Like maybe you have kids and, you're sleeping in and the kids are crying and you're the one having to take care of the kids and all that, whether,
Yeah, if selfish, moving in to make things easier on them because life is hard sometimes, Scott.
If it's a harmonious relationship, it can work. But when there's tension between, say, a son and a father, or a son and his mother, there's going to be issues.
Okay.
So that's, I guess, the perspective I view it as is there's got to be harmony and acceptance and working together through the situation.
Okay. Yep. So let's look at let's answer this question. Well, question number 2, we can go to that. I think I have somebody brought me that thing up here if I've lost it. Because what does this conversation look like and when does it need to happen? When they first move in, after they moved in for a while, something changes. So let's talk about the practical sides of this. So either if you have or have not navigated this, what have you seen that worked well and it served the proper purpose? People were able to get back on their feet, save money for a down payment, whatever the case may be. And how did they manage that? And what would happen? And what have you seen that has not worked? First of all, I will say this. if you're living, I'm saying this from from our experience, okay? At this point, I don't think our boys should have any negative impact on what the house looks like, and they do. That's why they're never going to watch this, so I can say this. So I think it's reasonable to expect mom and dad aren't still cleaning up after you. You know, we're not. You have to do your part of shares. You have to vacuum the floor too. You have to do the dishes too. This isn't a luxury suite here. This isn't it at all. If you're going to be here, you're going to have to try to contribute financially to the rent, to some of the other bills. A lot of times I think that's a good financial thing to do. And you're going to have to, you know, it's not like you were 12 again and mom's doing your laundry. You're a grown person. You need to do your own laundry. And so I think those kind of things have to sort of be talked about as you go along. And where is that it happens? All right, so we're answering question number 2 now. Question number 2. What, if you've navigated, I will tell you this, somebody just said recently to me that when their grown son moved out of the house, it was one of the greatest days of their life. It's not that they didn't love their son, but it was just a great day. So think about the golden rule. What do you think it is like for parents who now we're expecting for their kids to grow up, and by the time they're 18, 22, maybe 24, to either to be self-supporting and be out of the house. And now it's 10 years later, and the kids are still at the home. What would be reasonable, if you put yourself in the parent situation, what would be reasonable for you in how you handle that situation? We could all put ourselves in the adult child's perspective here. What if you were your parents and they are having you live with them and they weren't expecting this? This isn't what they thought, how life was going to turn out. How could you treat this situation with the golden rule towards them? I think not that would be very helpful. Willingly pay it, not being something that they have to nag you all the time to pay it. So I think it's reasonable to, hey, you know what, I'm living here, I'm going to pay rent and make sure it's paid on a regular basis, so they don't have to come following you on that. Now you might decide you're not going to pay. You're not going to have them pay rent if they're just trying to save money for a house. You don't need it. I've known people that have taken the rent and then given it back to the kid when the kid got ready to buy a house. There's that possibility too. Again, we're not giving that they have to do it this way. Every situation is different. We're just giving some advice. Scott?
Going the extra mile. When you see things that need to be done, do them. You don't need to be told, or them or us.
Yeah.
Just being a helper around the house.
Yes, I think that's really good. So if you're a grown person and you're still living at your parents' place, it'd be okay for you to buy some toilet paper sometimes. It would be okay for to quit yelling out, "Hey, Mom, where's the toilet paper? Did you buy any toilet paper? I can't believe you guys ran out of toilet paper." And you don't work that way, So make this whatever supplies that need to be made to go out of your way to make sure if the floor needs vacuum, you vacuum. Even if it's not your official chore that you guys have decided on, there are all those things that play into it. Tim?
I don't think I understood when you said the golden rule, and I'm sitting there reading this again. Now I kind of think I understand what you're getting at. You're inside the home. The children are going to treat the parents the way they would want to be treated, and vice versa.
Right.
So you're saying that apply the golden rule, or I don't like calling it that, but anyways,
I'm sorry.
Right. No, I mean I don't have a better phrase for. We all know what that means. I'm having a hard time. There's 7 years difference between my youngest and my oldest child, but some of this was just taken care of when in rides to school. I regularly told my children that my job as a parent was to help them transition. That they got a certain age, I said, you still need my money. you know, and I'm going to help you over the next several years to transition from that. You're going to take that away from me. And that's what we kind of talked about and had that understanding. So I'm having a hard time going to, I just think you got to start earlier on this. As a
Okay,
parent.
there's no doubt.
But things changed a lot from my
Yes.
from my youngest to my oldest.
Absolutely.
And some of the things you were talking about, like just the cost of living.
Yes.
So again, the golden rule makes more sense because the situations are going to keep changing.
Yeah. So we'll pick up there next time. So we're going to answer both of these things. If you have an adult child living at home for whatever reason it is, how would you want to be treated if you were them? Right? And if you are living at home as an adult child, how would you want to be treated if you were the parents? You know, appreciation maybe, you know, some things like that. So think about that. That's where we'll start. And then we'll go into there we'll deal with the next difficult situation as far as parents.